Two people can earn the exact same salary, live in the same city, have the same investment options, and even start with the same amount of money. Yet 10 years later, one could have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, while the other could be drowning in debt. Why? It isn't always intelligence. It isn't always income. And it certainly isn't because one person knows a secret investment nobody else knows. Sometimes, it's psychology, because money isn't just about numbers. Money is emotional. Money is personal. Money is connected to fear, freedom, status, childhood, confidence, insecurity, and sometimes our ego. Today, in about 10 minutes, we're going to explore the psychology of money and understand why the way you think about money can be more important than how much you know about it. Here's something fascinating. People don't think about money the same way. One person sees $10,000 in a bank account and thinks, I'm safe. Another sees $10,000 and thinks, I should invest this immediately. Someone else thinks, I finally deserve that new car. And another person thinks, what if something goes wrong? Same money. Completely different emotions. Why? Because our relationship with money is shaped by our experiences. Maybe your parents struggled financially. Maybe you grew up watching every dollar carefully. Maybe you saw people around you become wealthy. Maybe you watched someone lose everything. Those experiences can stay with you for decades. And without realizing it, they can influence every financial decision you make. Imagine growing up in a household where money was always tight. Bills were stressful. Unexpected expenses were terrifying. Maybe your family had to say, we can't afford that, over and over again. Now you're an adult. You earn good money. But every time you see your bank balance go down, you panic, even when you're financially okay. That's not necessarily irrational. Your brain remembers what financial insecurity felt like. On the other hand, someone who grew up wealthy may have a completely different relationship with risk. They may be comfortable investing, comfortable borrowing, comfortable taking chances, because losing money doesn't feel as terrifying to them. Neither person is necessarily smarter. They simply have different experiences. And different experiences create different financial behavior. Now let's talk about one of the most dangerous psychological traps. Lifestyle inflation. You get a raise. Maybe you go from earning $50,000 a year to $70,000. You feel richer. So you upgrade your apartment, buy a nicer car, eat at more expensive restaurants, take bigger vacations, buy things you couldn't afford before, and suddenly, your $20,000 raise has disappeared. Your income increased. But your financial freedom didn't. This is why earning more money doesn't automatically make you wealthy. If every increase in income creates an equal increase in spending, you can make $50,000, $100,000, or even $200,000 and still feel broke. The goal isn't just to increase your income. It's to create a gap between what you earn and what you spend. Because that gap is where wealth is built. Here's another psychological problem. We want other people to think we're successful. And that's where money can become dangerous. You see someone driving a $70,000 car. You think, they must be doing really well. But you don't know their bank balance. You don't know their debt. You don't know their monthly payment. You don't know if they have $100,000 invested or $100. The car tells you what they own. It doesn't tell you what they actually have. Real wealth is often invisible. The person wearing an old watch may have $1 million invested. The person driving a luxury car may be financing every part of their lifestyle. So don't spend money trying to look wealthy. Build wealth that doesn't need to be seen. Social media made this even harder. Every day, you see someone else's highlight reel. Someone bought a house. Someone retired at 35. Someone made $100,000 trading. Someone bought a Lamborghini. Someone is traveling the world. And suddenly, your normal life feels like failure. But remember, you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You don't see their debt. You don't see their stress. You don't see their mistakes. You don't see the years before the photograph. Your financial journey doesn't need to look impressive. It needs to work. Now let's talk about one of the most beautiful ideas in finance, compounding. Imagine you invest $10,000. It earns returns. Then those returns start earning returns. Then those returns earn even more returns. Your money begins working on top of itself. But here's the psychological problem. Compounding is boring at first. Very boring. You invest. Nothing dramatic happens. You keep investing, still not much excitement. But years later, the growth can become much more powerful. The hardest part isn't understanding compounding, it's having the patience to let it happen. Humans are naturally attracted to quick rewards. That's why get-rich-quick schemes are so powerful. Double your money. Guaranteed returns. Buy this stock before everyone else. Become wealthy in 30 days. The promise is exciting. Slow investing isn't exciting. Saving $500 every month isn't exciting. Waiting 10 years isn't exciting. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Building wealth is usually boring. And that's actually good news, because boring strategies are easier to repeat. Now we reach one of the biggest psychological challenges in investing. Loss aversion. Losing $1,000 can feel much worse than gaining $1,000 feels good. So when markets fall, fear takes over. You start thinking, maybe I should sell. Maybe this time it's different. Maybe I'll buy back later. But often, the biggest financial mistakes happen when emotions become louder than your long-term plan. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion. That's impossible. The goal is to build a financial system that doesn't require you to make perfect emotional decisions every time. One of the greatest financial advantages you can have isn't a huge salary. It's time. If you're 25 and invest consistently, you have decades for your money to compound. If you're 45, you can still build wealth. But you have less time for compounding to work. This is why starting early matters. Not because you need to become rich overnight, but because small decisions repeated for decades can become enormous. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. And here's perhaps the most important psychological lesson. Money isn't really about money. What you ultimately want is what money can give you. Freedom, security, options, time, the ability to say no to a job you hate, the ability to handle an unexpected $5,000 emergency without panic, the ability to help your family, the ability to take a year off, the ability to choose. That's what financial freedom really means, not necessarily owning the biggest house, not necessarily driving the most expensive car, but having enough financial control that your decisions aren't constantly controlled by money. And here's something I want you to remember. You're going to make mistakes with money. Everyone does. Maybe you bought something you didn't need. Maybe you took on too much debt. Maybe you started investing late. Maybe you wasted money in your 20s. That doesn't mean you failed. Your financial life isn't decided by one mistake. It's shaped by what you do repeatedly. You don't need a perfect financial life. You need better habits repeated for a long time. So let's turn everything we've learned into 5 simple rules. Rule 1. Don't confuse looking rich with being rich. Your possessions are visible, your net worth isn't. Rule 2. Leave room between your income and your lifestyle. The bigger that gap becomes, the more financial freedom you can build. Rule 3. Think long-term. Compounding rewards. Patience. Rule 4. Don't let fear make your financial decisions. Create a plan before emotions take over. Rule 5. Define what enough means for you, because if you never know what enough looks like, you can spend your entire life chasing more. So, what's the psychology of money? It's understanding that wealth isn't simply created by knowing more. It's created by behaving well, especially when nobody is watching. It's saving when you could spend, investing when it's boring, staying patient when everyone else is panicking, and understanding that your financial journey doesn't need to impress anyone, because the person you really need to impress is the future version of yourself. 10 years from now, you may not remember the small things you didn't buy, but you may remember the financial habits you built, the debt you avoided, the investments you made, the money you saved, and the freedom those decisions created. Money is mathematical, but managing money is deeply human, and once you understand your own psychology, you can start making better financial decisions. Not perfect decisions, better decisions. And sometimes, better decisions repeated for long enough can completely change your life. If you want more simple, practical lessons about money, investing, and building wealth, subscribe to Mr. Good Finance. Because here, we don't just talk about making money. We learn how to think better about money, learn, invest, grow your wealth. I'll see you in the next one.